Welcome to the Nerdtastic in 3D podcast.
It's Nerdtastic in 3D. Oh, it's Nerdtastic in 3D. Yes, it's Nerdtastic in 3D. It's Nerdtastic
In
3D!
bong.
Bing bong. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Nerdtastic in 3D episode number. Anyone know?
Turn it on.
Anyone know?
32.
33?
Why don't you turn the camera on, guys?
We're turning the camera on right now. 32.
Episode 32.
Magic Johnson's number.
Did we get
close.
any feedback about our episode number 31 extravaganza?
I don't know. Does anybody
Poker
care?
challenge
I
experience.
don't think anybody cares.
I think Jack said that one person said, yeah, it was all right.
Yeah, nobody.
That's a good response. How was it?
Yeah, it was all right.
It's kind of a sound that comes out.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's good times.
We got like 4 listeners.
Nerdtastic in 3D is a podcast of entertainment industry professionals talking to you about anything and everything that we find entertaining and or nerdy. My name is Jason Carter,
I'm Jack Eckler. I'm Sean Fennel.
I'm Josh the Brat.
and we are joined by a very, very special guest from Disney feature animation, Chris Williams. Welcome,
Yes,
Chris.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you. Not the director.
Not the director.
No, this is a really important distinction. Not the director.
You're
of the
Chris
role.
D. Williams?
Yes.
Chris D. Not
Yes.
Chris blank Williams.
Right. I'm a bit of celebrity at Disney because I'm the wrong guy.
I like that. It's good. You
Yeah.
get lots of mail,
Yep.
lots of
I've been
email.
invited to John Lasseter meetings, all kinds of stuff.
Interesting.
That's awesome.
Do you ever
Yep. You
show
ever
up and
crash
be like,
them?
here I
Yeah.
am, guys?
I've thought about it, but they filtered me out over the first sort of 4 or 5 months. But
Absolutely.
for a while, I was getting,
You show up with a beer and a beer cozy, and you're like, hey, guys, I'm here for the party.
yeah.
Well,
Do
no-
it. Show.
oh.
Let's make a movie.
Let's see the reels.
Exactly.
yeah.
If you had a name that was very easily
Confused.
Like my nickname, Samuel L. Jackson. Everybody gets me confused.
But I mean, if your
Samuel.
name was John Lasseter or something, and you sit there and it's like, can I have a reservation for John Lasseter? It's just like, oh yes, sir, right away.
Yeah, haven't you?
I'm
did
sure
you,
you'd get so much.
Did you see the
so much bank?
the Michael Jordan commercial? It was it's not easy being Michael Jordan, and then it's this guy calling up, same thing. He calls for dinner reservations, like Michael Jordan, and he's like, really? The guy goes, really? Yeah, absolutely. We can totally get you a party of 8, no problem. And the guy rolls up, and he's this like white investment banker. He's like, hi, I'm Michael Jordan, and the like maitre is just like,
No, you're not.
like just pure disappointment. It's like a whole series of those things. It's awesome. Can I get a golf tee off time at Pebble Beach?
Oh yeah, dude.
yeah, Michael Jordan.
I'd milk that till the day I die.
Too bad there aren't any famous Josh.
Can't wait for the day
Labrats
that
out there.
Michael Jordan
Exactly.
Yeah, I
actually
had a-
shows up and they're like, no.
I had a guy on LinkedIn, Chris Williams, want to connect with me and set up like a group. And he's
Chris
like,
Williams group?
Yeah.
That's pretty
And
rad.
I was like, and I asked him, I was like, "What do you want to do?" He said, "Well, maybe meet once a month and talk about stuff." Like, how much time do you think I have to get together with guys who I have nothing in common with other than my name? Talk about stuff that won't ever happen.
No, come on. You could talk about like spellings
Yeah.
and mispronunciations. It'll be
Right,
brilliant.
right.
It'll be absolutely
Heritages.
brilliant.
But you've done a lot of other cool stuff, so he could have been hitting you up over any number of projects, right?
I don't know what he wanted.
A personal relationship.
It felt icky.
So Chris is joining us, like we said, from Disney Feature, and we're going to get a little bit into his backstory and what we're really here to talk about, which is an interesting project he's working on. But first, I think we got to mention that Comicon's coming up pretty soon, right, guys?
Next
Oh, it
week,
is next week, yeah.
Who's going?
I am.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
I think I'll be there Wednesday.
Okay. That's going.
Wednesday.
That counts as going, Jack. if
Yeah, I
you'll
mean,
be
I
there.
usually go longer. My whole family's coming out that Thursday for the next week. They picked
Oh.
just the wrong time. And
Invite the Gecklers on the show. We record every Thursday.
might
They
be
don't
able
listen
make
to
it
the
happen.
podcast,
No,
obviously.
no, they do. My sister, my niece are our 2 probably biggest fans of the show.
They are the audience.
Exactly.
I'm going to sum it up. Say, Chris, you're speaking to them. But yeah, I'll go to the preview night this year, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I'll drive back that night.
So-
no staying over.
So does Comic-Con give like a preview of all the different panels and things like that? Like kind of Seagraph does. You get like a...
Yeah, like a book.
Right, and they talk about here are all the talks and the panels, and you can kind of schedule out your time there and jazz like that.
Yeah, which is absolutely
It's
not
a-
helpful whatsoever.
It's immense, though.
Because you have to stand in line like at 5 in the morning or 4 in the morning to just get into the H hall, which is the big grand hall where they have everything that is worth going to see. And the line just gets, it's like 3 main attraction Disney rides like linked together, and then that's what the line is to get into this hall.
Just to get into the hall.
Yeah.
And that's like the show floor, basically?
No, it's just to listen to the panels.
That's like a panel.
Yeah.
That's the main. There's multiple panels.
And the thing is, once one is done, you don't need to leave. So you can sit there and wait the entire day. So the only time other people can get in is when someone leaves. So that line will just stay. You're like, okay, I want to go to the 6 o'clock, blah, blah, blah. If and you're probably not going to get in.
So this is semi-unrelated, but I heard a story about just from another podcast, some guys that were doing a panel at an expo. It might have been Comicon. And someone in the audience threw a lemon at one of the guys talking, and he supposedly calmly stood up and punched the lemon back into the audience. I just thought that was an epic story. One, because what a random target, but who punches a lemon?
Epic would have been it was thrown. He didn't move and just caught it with one hand.
Yeah, and then crushed it.
Crushed it or took a big ass bite,
huge
but
bite
didn't
out of it.
wince. And sat it down. And it was like, next question. It just went on.
It's like a Dos Equis man
would've been
move right
epic.
there.
Like a boss.
Yeah. He doesn't wince at a lemon. A lemon winces at him.
Ironically, though, Jason, you've never been. And I've been trying to sell you on this for the last couple of years of how much I think he'd enjoy just the experience of at least checking it out once.
No, I'm interested in the concept, but I keep getting pulled back by this small, healthy dose of social claustrophobia that I have. You get around tons and tons of crowds of people, and it just starts to get a little uncomfortable.
You go to amusement parks.
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like you can get away from people there still. You're funneling to one indoor space with...
You were at E3 with me.
True, but E3's not as crowded as what I hear.
I don't know,
Comic-Con is. Now, I
dude.
haven't been.
It can be just the same. I mean, it just depends where you're at and what sections you're in.
I will say the one thing that I think is kind of a staple of Comic-Con that does seem very interesting is just all the cosplay. I think, so many people dressing up. It just seems interesting. I don't particularly care to do it, but all these people who, hey, I'm going to spend some money on this giant Kung Fu Panda costume or Master Chief costume or whatever it is and come on down to Comic-Con. I just think it seems...
Do you have a lot of fun when you go, Chris?
I love it.
Time?
I love it, but the crowds are huge. Yeah. And, the cosplay is awesome. Last year, I had a moment where there was a Darth Vader there. There's many Darth Vaders at Comic-Con.
There was a good one there last year.
They actually have a LinkedIn group. They get together once a month.
This Darth Vader looked like he was pushing 300 pounds, and and it was just so funny. What is he using the Force for? He was just, but he
to lose weight, clearly.
Yeah, but you'd hit these action poses when you're 300 pounds, and it's like your stomach is pushing through the ventilator or whatever it is. It just didn't go.
It's not working.
Yeah,
He's like,
it's great.
Have you guys have you guys seen the Fat Batman YouTube videos?
Yeah.
The guy who goes to Subway and goes, "Hello, I'm Batman. I'd like a number 6." And he's same kind of deal. Easily pushing 350.
They had a Miami Dolphins Darth Vader there last year.
Did they?
Which was amazing. He was in the green, and he
yeah.
had the logos, and I flipped my shit. I turned a corner, I was like, it was for a Dolphins fan, it was like the holy grail. Everything I loved encompassed in one character at one moment, dude.
I like all the pimp Vaders that show up all
well, that's
pimped
true.
out.
See, my favorite, the one is the one I get surprised about. There was this woman...
Like a Miami Dolphins Darth Vader?
There was this woman who... dressed in kind of this blue dress and had yellow dish gloves on and a rag, and I was like, "Who is this woman?" And it's freaking Rosalita or whatever her name is from Family Guy that goes, "No, no, no." And I'm just sitting there and I looked and I was just like, "Oh my god!" And I lost my shit going that is the greatest idea. And those are the ones that surprise me the most, as opposed to seeing 500 Jokers and Batmans. But
so speaking of Family Guy, who has seen Ted?
I saw it.
Not yet.
Did
I'm going
you?
to see it this weekend.
I have not seen it. It looks awesome though.
It looks pretty funny, Josh.
It was very funny. It was great. It was a fun movie.
Yeah.
It was kind of like a live action Family Guy episode, if you will, but just without having the restrictions of cussing and what they can say. But I mean, there were so many moments where you're laughing your ass off, and there's one moment especially where Mark Wahlberg's character is recalling what happened and Mila, what's her name? Mila Kunis? Kunis, thank you. Mila Kunis is remembering her version of the night, and she says his thing, her version, and then he says his, and it's like, "Oh, but I remember it this way." And then his version is like a spoof on another movie of a spoof of another movie, but there were so many people, like the age difference in the
Inception
audience.
comedy.
Yeah, well, the age
Well,
difference
it's
in the audience.
It's Family Guy, right?
Well, I mean, I could probably tell you because this doesn't ruin the movie and stuff like that. But when he remembers the night, he remembers like Saturday Night Fever, but he remembers the version from Airplane. So when he's like doing like the poses up, it's like "Pachoom," like how it does on Airplane. And so I'm laughing at the fact that it's all of that stuff. But there are so many people in the audience that were like younger that had no idea what the hell that was even
That's funny.
referencing.
But like, they call that the Inception spoof.
The Inception spoof, a spoof with
with
inside.
an
Do they really?
It's good times. Come on.
No, did you just make that up? or
Yeah,
is that-
completely. He completely.
But you could buy it, right?
And he's
You
looking.
could
He's
buy
looking for
it.
laughter.
Well, the fact that I had to ask you, that's
Sean,
like,
just say it.
Didn't you just get that from my Inception comedy comment that I planted in the back of your mind?
Wow.
Quite
really
possibly.
quietly?
That's true Inception.
Inception shit. I
Hey,
just planted.
ladies and gentlemen, in case you didn't know, I'm actually Sean's puppet. Pretty much.
I'm just really good at planting idea in other people's heads.
He's
All right.
using the fat force on you.
So I'm sure that people would much rather hear about our guests than hear us banter.
No,
about
but in
nothingness.
general, though, Chris, I mean, you've had you like going.
I
mean,
love going.
You gotta talk. They gotta talk to Jason here. He's
I'm
gotta come
stunned
down.
that you have a podcast that
For
has
nerds.
the word nerd in it,
Yep.
and you haven't been to Comicon.
I
Neither
am a
has
little
Sean,
ashamed
I
of
have
myself.
not.
Really?
And I'm not able to go this year. Kind of
2013,
bummed
Sean.
about it. Let's do it.
We'll go.
You and I.
We'll go. So,
High
Chris,
five and
yes.
white guys in Comic-Con.
so why don't you give us a little bit of your backstory? Where'd you grow up? Where are you from? How'd you kind of get into the industry? Give us some of the early insights into what makes you you.
What makes me tick? Yeah, so I'm
Okay, Freud.
from Canada. Do you guys know where that is?
I'm sorry. By the way,
America Junior.
the podcast.
Sorry.
Yeah, here we go. These are all new and
You
original.
started
Let's hear it.
it. You
Hey,
Let's hear
started
them.
hey, the best T-shirt I've ever seen in my life.
Hey, buddy.
Has a picture of America and then Canada colored
America's
in red.
hat.
And it says America's hat. I
Yeah,
love that.
We've
It's
got
so brilliant.
We've got another one. Ours says Canada's underwear.
Yes.
That's pretty brilliant.
Take that, America.
So whereabouts are you from?
He's from North America.
Yeah, I'm a North American. I grew up in Ottawa. So
Okay.
yeah, and and I actually didn't get into animation or film until long after I went to university in Montreal, and then I went down to animation school outside of Toronto. So I'm a 2D trained animator who can't draw.
Nice.
Yeah,
I like it.
so-
That's brilliant.
Yeah, you know.
It's interesting because I think that was my thing when trying to do that. I'm not as clearly as talented as most 2D artists are.
Right.
So
It's hard, you know. Like it's a really tough discipline. You have to be a great technician, and as much as I thought I could do decent performance or decent action stuff, I just couldn't draw as well as I needed to. But then CG came in right when I was graduating. Toy Story came out, and Jurassic Park came out all around that time. So I just tried to push myself in that direction, and it's been great. That was a really good move for me. I would never have survived as a 2D guy.
that's rare.
well,
Because I had heard so many stories the opposite way where the guys were like, well,
Right.
I'm not switching to that.
Yeah, I think those are guys that can draw, and they're not limited by their skill set. The stuff that really that really hung me up was stuff like keeping things on model or drawing. You know, just totally
To be
drawing.
honest, let me go back to drawing. I
Yeah.
just was not good at that.
Any way of putting lines on paper.
So, the computer models, they're there. I don't have to worry about that stuff. I don't have to devote any time or energy to keeping Sylvester looking like Sylvester or whatever it was. And I could just worry about the mechanics of motion or performance. And so I made that transition in 98, 99. So that would have been a couple years after graduating from Sheridan College.
Power animator?
No, Maya.
So when you got into 3D, the first package you
Yeah.
started to teach yourself in was mine?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and then in 2001, I came down for Spidey 1.
Cool.
So that was my first gig in the States, and I've been here ever since.
Nice.
Yeah.
And now, how has your career looked like as far as projects? Have you stayed at studios for lengths of time, or have you been more bouncy around the industry? How's that looked for you?
I like to commit to a place. That's my preference. Roll with the good and the bad on the projects, because if you stay with a place long enough, there's gonna be some projects you like more than others.
Sure.
But I was at Sony for over 10 years, so I did all the Spidey movies. Not the most recent one, and I did the open season, Clyde had the Chance of Meatball. So my preference, I do really like to go from realism over to character animation stuff.
Sure.
I really like that balance. It forces me to think outside I have to sort of reset my animation brain for the different styles.
Right.
Variety is great. You know, I think it's a really good way to go. A lot of people just sort of specialize in one or the other, but I do prefer to do both if I can.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you now find yourself at
The Mouse.
the House of Mouse.
The House of Mouse. Disney feature. Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah, Wreck-It Ralph. So, you know, we have we try to be very staticky
I'm making it better.
in our.
There's wind.
I like it. Yes, Sean is giving us his wind.
Avocado.
I wouldn't even know how to fix that.
So, you know, we try to be respectful of NDA stuff. We don't want you to say too much, but
Right.
without giving too much away, how has the experience been? Are we going to like the story?
Yes.
Trailer came out recently at E3. Tell us
Yep.
a little bit about Wreck-It.
Wreck-It is really enjoyable. I love working on it. It's a great movie from what I've seen so far. The cut is great that we've seen. Trailers, I think people are excited. They love, you know, the video game take on the characters, that, you know, the cameos, and I think it's going to do great. I love working on it. It's fantastic.
Have you guys all seen the trailer for it?
I have not.
I did. Yeah.
So I think the thing that surprised me, not knowing much about it, was the character design of the main character. He's like a big dude.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like, I mean, I know he, you know, don't want to give too much away from the story, but I think you can get from the trailer that he's a villain who is no longer wanting to be a villain. And so, you know, a villain, they design him to be big. But I was surprised that the main character of the story is like this built, big,
Right.
square guy.
Yeah, all that was obviously done before I showed up. But,
Sure.
You know, Donkey Kong, like the style of in the trailer, you can see there's a little bit of that 8-bit style of animation and gaming, and they really reference that stuff for the designs, and it works great.
How is have you been able to animate the main character? I assume at this point.
Yep.
So how is that character design? How is it able to animate? Is it pretty good? I mean, have they done a good job setting up all the rigs? And
Yeah.
does it have constraints on because of the locomotion of the character? Or
You know, if talking about rigs and stuff like that, I know there's people out there in the animation industry who are really particular about rigs. I tend to I'm okay working with what I'm given, so I can't really say that this is the best rig I've ever used or it's not, but I find him easy to use. He's a big character, so you've got to, you know, your performance is like, his hands are gigantic, you know.
Yeah.
Anytime he's got to interact with something that's like a normal size, you've got to really kind of, you know, be careful of how you pose him. That's a challenging element to him. But no, I mean, yeah, it's a lot of fun so far. Really
Nice.
enjoying it. Yeah.
nice, very
Yeah,
very
Works
cool.
with Miss Karen Ryan.
Yes. Indeed.
Yes, and she's there right now while I'm here.
Yeah,
She's,
absolutely. You got to
she's
come
always
hang out
there.
with us.
isn't she?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's an
kinda
interesting
lives
point,
there.
Jack. Why don't we? So we have different places that we all work, and we've talked a little bit about how there can be these concepts of crunch times in the industry and stuff like that. But I think Wreck-It's really setting a record.
Yeah? Huh?
See what I did there?
Oh, I see. WRECK.
It's good times, right? It's
Yeah.
good times. We had no shortage of puns. So yeah, why don't you talk a little bit about how have the hours been?
Why am I not actually doing this podcast at my desk? I think is a better question.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, how did you-
We won't air this
How did
until
you get
after the
free?
show's done, so you won't get in trouble. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, it's a lot of hours. It's definitely a big crunch, and I think that it's something that's new to me because the stress on the story is it's huge at Disney and with John Lasseter, obviously. So to me, it's worth it. If the changes they make pushes animation a bit later and you get a stronger story out of it, I think it's worth it.
Right.
And I feel like anytime we've been slowed down with production for, you know, inventory doesn't come through as quickly as we like it to, I feel like the reasons make sense to me from a story perspective. So, yeah.
Do you guys at Disney, at DreamWorks, and this was the first time I've ever been to a studio that actually does this, is you screen or you watch the movie many, many times.
Right.
You get it screened over and over and over, you know, for your show.
Right.
And then you are able to give notes on it.
Yeah.
You know, is Disney
Yeah, they've absolutely been doing that. I've only seen 2 screenings, but I think they're up to 7 or 8, and they'll show it when they've got rough storyboards. They'll throw it up there and get notes, and it's a really collaborative effort, I think.
They encourage people, normal Joe Schmoes in the studio, to give notes as well.
Yeah.
Like everybody turn in their notes.
Yeah, I don't know how many of those notes they use.
Sure.
I think they'll, you know, if there's a consistent thread that's coming up, they'll address it. And because I think that, you know, even though we might be Joe Schmoes on the production, we are a an audience that would go see a film, would have opinions. And so if you take that out of it, then they can look at, what things are bumping us and what isn't working. And so it's a good way to get an idea as to what, where you should make changes and cut. And
Nice.
Yeah.
And who's directing the film?
Rich Moore.
And how is Rich?
Fantastic.
Yeah? What's he done in the past?
He's a Futurama Simpsons guy.
Oh, sweet.
I found out he directed one of my favorite Simpsons episodes, the Sideshow Bob Cape Fear episode.
Oh, yeah.
All right,
nice.
with the rakes.
Absolutely.
With the rakes. So
Now, is this his first foray into CG animation? Or did Futurama have some CG as well?
They do have some,
Well,
but
yeah,
I don't.
Their intro's all CG.
Yeah, I don't know how that's affected him directing the film.
But he's good to work with?
Yeah,
Good
he's
job?
great.
Speaking of that, has
yeah.
anyone seen the new episodes of Futurama's Plug on Adult Swim or on
Comedy Central.
Comedy Central?
Have not.
It's a cardboard diorama of the actual opening to Futurama. And
Nice.
it all works. They got the little rocket ship on a
Is it-
wire.
is it live
flying.
action?
Huh?
Is it live action or is it like an animated diorama?
It's live action,
Huh.
but it's this cardboard diorama. It's awesome. If
Nice.
you haven't seen it, look it up. It's great.
That's
Nice.
cool.
So professionally, you're an animator.
Professionally, I'm an animator. Yeah.
What about your spare time? What do you do?
Well, are we talking artistic endeavors? Or are we talking
Like
just
long walks on the
everything?
beach,
I'd love to be playing hockey right now. That's something I enjoy doing.
ice or street?
Ice.
You're from Canada. What else is there?
Yeah. What else would I do?
Exactly.
And if I can't skate, we'll play street hockey.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we wanted to have you on the show because you have particular artistic interests outside of your professional job.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about what you like to do in your spare time, what you're interested in, what project you're working on right now.
Yeah. I wish everyone could see the looks you're giving me because they're very
Provocative?
suggestive. Yeah, a little bit.
I think he kind of.
A little bit.
I
Are you
can't
guys
tell. Do you
catching
want
that?
him? I've never seen this from him. Like,
It's
yeah.
just-
well, the
it's-
camera might have caught it, but
it's
he was
just,
definitely making me feel a little.
It's just how
uncomfortable.
much you look like Pete Upson that really just does it. Pete, if you're out there, found
Yeah.
your twin.
Yeah. We talked about this before. How much I look like other people. So.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, well, I actually do a little bit of writing on the side. I think all of us in animation have projects outside of what we're doing. I don't know what everyone else's reasons are, but I found that I wanted to be creative in a way that was not messy, which is painting is quite messy and hard to do when you don't have time. And I could just grab a laptop and write. And I had stuff that I wanted to maybe flesh out a little bit and develop. And so I started writing about 10 years ago. I wrote this World War I thing, and which I'm still kind of working on in some regard. And as I get these little kernels of ideas that really speak to me, I try to flush them out a little bit, get a an outline going. So I have lots of projects that I've been developing and in various stages of completion. And the one that I'm really focused on now is a comic called Red Fog. So it's a Nazi zombie thing, and that is what is taking my attention outside of my 70-hour work weeks.
It's awesome. It's awesome. So I'll interrupt you there slightly just to tell you I don't believe I've mentioned this before, but you have quite a few Call of Duty fans in the
Excellent.
The room. And I am not at all a Call of Duty fan. However, I have probably put in over 250 hours into Nazi zombies.
That's
Call of
excellent.
Duty. So
Yeah.
yeah, you definitely have some Nazi fans. We're all Walking Dead fans.
Yeah.
And
not
you
per
throw-
se Nazi fans, but fans of potentially Nazi zombies.
Yeah.
How about? Wow, there's no coming back.
There's
from
no
that.
coming back from that, Jason.
No.
I just want to specify we all don't believe what Jason believes.
Exactly. We're a fan
like
of
to distance
zombies.
ourselves.
Jason, put your arm down. Put your arm down.
We're a fan of zombies, not Nazis.
Yeah.
No, but that's really awesome. You're going to be taking it to Comicon.
Well, doing a little bit at Comicon. Yeah, the book's not done yet.
Okay.
So, but I do have a little bit of a presence there. We're going to be selling some prints, and I'm going to be wearing my shirts, and it's just a little bit to get out there and just meet people and try to generate a bit of a buzz.
Yeah.
It's hard to cut through the noise of Comic-Con because there are so many people and they all have their own projects. So you approach somebody, it's like, hey, you want to talk about my project? And while you're talking to them about your project, you can tell as their eyes glaze over,
Just
I can't wait
waiting.
to interject
Yeah.
and talk about my project.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that happens.
Absolutely.
But I do love going there. I wish the book was ready this year, but we'll have to wait till next year. And
how tell us about how it came to be. What's the origin story? How far along are you? What's the process been like?
Well, the origin of the story, I'm a big history guy, and so I spend too much time watching the History Channel. I have to admit, my wife, it drives her crazy. The black and white. Yeah, right. I mean, it's hard for me to defend watching, the World War II stuff.
Well,
like I always know how it ends.
That genre, I can't get enough of.
Yeah,
World War II is just
right?
fascinating to me.
I know. So I want to figure out exactly how I came up with this story, but I have a feeling. And it's a little murky, but it roots down to Martin Bormann, this is all rooted in history. It's not, I love zombies, I want to write a story about zombies. It's not that. I love history and World War II history, and it just came out of that natural interest of mine. And I came across in some of my research Martin Bormann, who was Hitler's secretary. I mean, it doesn't sound that ominous, right? Being Hitler's secretary, but. Right. It turned out that I was a little stunned that I hadn't heard of this guy before, considering how important he was. But he was probably the most important person in the Reich outside of Hitler, because he controlled access to Adolf Hitler for all the guys that we've heard of. So Himmler, Goering, Goebbels, all these guys had to go through Bormann to get to Hitler. And I'd never heard of him before. And so I read up on this guy, and he was in the bunker right to the very end, and he disappeared, and nobody knew where he went. Some people said he was dead.
From the bunker. They never found his body.
Right. They didn't know where he went. He left with one other adjunct, and they were gone. And so there were people that felt that he'd gone to Argentina, along with through the Odessa line, to escape the Nazi Germany. Other said that he died, as he left the bunker. So there's a big mystery about it, and they couldn't really confirm that he was dead until the 70s, but he was tried in absentia at Nuremberg. He was sentenced to die. So as I read about this, my thought was, what if he was alive? What would he do? What's he doing? And this guy is as pure a Nazi as you get. I mean, he was insane. And obviously he will create a zombie army.
Of course.
Right? That is the logical conclusion to
he
that.
wants him to come
what
back.
would he do? So the story is it's locked in history. All the foundation is through history. So it takes place in 1951. Bormann has resurfaced. All the high-ranking Nazis and the scientists have sort of gone their separate ways in hiding for 6 years. And the premise is that right before the war ended, they were on the verge of being able to raise the dead. And the history also has a lot of stories about their occult. We've all heard about the occult stuff with the Nazi Party, and there's something called Vril, which I hadn't heard of until we started doing this book. And Mike Doherty was my artist, was the guy that brought me into that. But they believed in this sort of life force that was deep in the mountains of Bavaria, and it was just this really weird sort of occultish, raise the dead, control life type of life force. And they actually believed it. And Bormann was the guy that believed this stuff. So in 1951 they've come back, and they go to Stalingrad, which was the site of the Nazis' biggest wartime defeat. Huge army, about 500,000 Nazis died there. So I have them. They reconvene. They come out of hiding in Stalingrad, and they use this Vril to raise this army. They can control them. They can regenerate a little bit, but that is where this huge army comes from. That's my first chapter. It's this enormous army that these Nazi priests can control them a little bit, and Bormann just has them retake all of Europe.
I'm hooked.
Yeah, so
sold.
So that's it. So they take over Europe, and then Bormann he's completely obsessed with revenge on the Allies. And his whole thing is to sucker the Allies back into a ground war. Nobody knows what these guys are. No one knows they're undead, because they move so fast that they annihilate everything in their path. So
that's very cool, which is a different take, I think, on kind of the typical modern zombie,
Yeah.
right? That kind of broken ankle dragging its back foot.
Right.
The dead blitzkrieg.
The Walking
Yeah,
Dead.
It's a little bit of 28 Days Later. I really love the speed of them in there, and there's a little element because of the the Vril. There's a magical element, and there's a touch of the Army of the Undead and
That's what I was
from
gonna
Lord of
say,
the
Lord of the
Rings.
Rings.
So if you think in those terms, that's kind of what we're dealing with. I know purists want them sort of lumbering around real slow and stuff, and I get it, but
28
It's
days
not-
later, though, those ones were terrifying.
They were
They were
aggressive.
really scary,
those
right?
were
Scary
like-
as hell.
yeah.
Because those, just blitz.
So,
God,
Oh, that's
so
anger.
angry.
so
Yeah.
angry. So do you have when you thought of this idea and you started writing it, did you think of a whole arc of beginning to end?
Yeah.
With maybe it's 7 books, 2 books, 1 book, it doesn't matter. But do you have like a beginning and end?
Yeah.
Like that would solidify, or would it be like a continuous?
Right. Well, the initial thing I wrote was about 10 pages, and I'm as I was in writing treatments, that's what everyone does, right? They write movie treatments that never get made. So I have a bunch of those, and this was one of those. I saw it as a film, and I don't know why I didn't think graphic novel right from the very beginning. I really should have. It was sort of a bad moment of
Well, it sounds like a good film too, though.
Well, to me, it's a good film, it's a game, and it's a book. So I think it's all three of those things. And when Mike's drawing it, I gave him the treatment. And I said, do you need more than this? Because there wasn't a lot of dialogue in the treatment. It was a lot of, this is what happens. And it's a very, if you've read a movie treatment, they tend to sort of breeze through the action quite a bit. And he said, this is perfect for me. Mike Doherty he's an old Marvel comic book guy. So he did all the Conan books through the 80s. And he's got a real gritty style. He read it. He's like, I love it. I want to work on it. And I just say to him, as long as it's cinematic, like that is what I want in terms of the panels. I want them to be cinematic. And if there's story arcs that are important, if there's panels that really need to be there to lay a foundation for something down the road, then that's the type of stuff that I'll ask him to do. But I want him to enjoy it as much as possible. And so I don't put any limits on what he wants to do. I want him to enjoy it. And sometimes I feel like, with my writing, there's probably stuff that he could give me notes on that can make it better. And with his drawings, maybe sometimes I could think of another way to do it. But in animation, we're so managed on our details all the time. I kind of feel like just let him run with it, and
Very cool.
he's loving it, and we work really well together, and it's awesome. It's a really good process so far.
How did you guys get hooked up? You just contacted him out of the blue, or?
Well, this is the great part about animation. We all know that there's you've got connections to all types of people, right? It's really amazing.
You're like 3 people away from knowing, the
Everyone.
president of
Kevin
every
Bacon.
company.
Yeah, right. It's incredible. And so when I thought about doing this as a comic, I wandered over to the Spa building at Sony, where I was there at the time. And there's a guy by the name of Jack Sue who's also a comic book guy. He did his own book and won an award for his. And I thought I would just pick his brain just to see if he knew anybody. And he said no. That was his first reaction. Like, no, I don't know anybody. So it's like, okay. So I wandered back. And then about a week later, he's like, you know what? I totally forgot about this guy, Mike. And he put us in touch. And so I left a message with Mike. I was kind of nervous about,
Cold call.
yeah, I mean, he was like telling me he's an old Marvel guy, Conan guy. I figured he wouldn't have the time to even talk to me. But he was just really into the story. We had a great conversation. And so that's how we met up. And, we've been meeting at pubs. He's Scottish. I'm Canadian. So, he and
So you have a
pretty
ton in
much-
common.
Right. Yeah. We're both thrifty.
You both like to drink.
So we always meet at the King's Head down in Santa Monica or one of these places, and he pulls out his drawings, and it's great because he usually has them rolled up. He's coming on his motorbike or something. It's so low key. He unravels it. We make sure there's no beer, on the table, and it's just awesome. And he does everything. It's inks and it's if you look at the drawings on the face, I've got a Facebook Red Fog page, and if you look at the drawings, you can see the line work there. You can see like he does rain with liquid paper. It's stuff like that, and I just feel like we're missing a lot of that in comics, and I just want that raw, gritty, feel to the book.
Get that texture back that we
Yeah,
used to have.
if I was smart, I would have brought drawings in, but I totally forgot as I was rushing out this morning to get to work.
No.
But it would have been great to show those off. He just does amazing work. So
Very,
I've
very
seen some
cool.
of them on the Facebook page for.
yeah, and I was mentioning to Jason, he's a detail freak with World War II, and he's got a garage full of GI Joes and all this kind of stuff, like to scale tanks and all this crazy stuff. And at one point, he told me that he changed all the guns in one of the chapters because he realized the gun he drew was a 1945 model, and we're in 1951. That takes a certain
And
level of commitment.
you had no idea he was this kind
None
of
of
buff
us-
before you.
No.
That just was a happy
coincidence.
Yeah.
Happy accident.
But the first time I met him, we were at the Britannia pub. Well, it's always at a pub. It's the other one in Santa Monica.
Santa Monica, yeah.
And this guy walks out, and Mike says hey to the guy, and it turns out this guy was at Point to Hook. He was on the D-Day invasion, Normandy.
Wow.
You know, so he's really tapped into this stuff, and I'm really lucky to have this guy doing the drawings, you know?
Very cool. And I have to say, your approach to, I love your thought process about how what we do professionally, where our art our creative process is managed down to a micro detailed level.
Yeah.
And so your approach at a much more macro hands-off level with another artist.
Right.
What a cool collaborative concept. I think I've got to imagine that there have been moments for you in the process where the picture that you had in your head as the writer is different than the execution that your artist has come up with. How has that been for you? Have you been okay giving it up a little bit? Have there been moments where you've been precious with certain parts and certain things, or how has that relationship been for you guys?
Well, I will push him on story points a little bit. And I think once per chapter we've had I kind of need to have this in there because I do want to make sure the foundation for a good story is there.
Sure.
And so sometimes, that doesn't get caught. We don't see that in the execution of the drawing. But my question to Mike every time he finishes the chapter, I'll say to him, "Are you 100% happy with this? Would you change anything about this chapter?" And he says no. And that's good enough for me. It doesn't matter if I love, or I could do without certain panels. It doesn't matter to me. At the end of the day, I want him to love it. And I want to love it. And if I get stuck with 2,000 books in my garage, that's the way it goes. But the process has been good. We've been creative, and we've done something that we're both proud of.
For sure.
That's trusting your artist. I mean, that's trusting the people that you work with.
Very.
We all know this just because of an issue that we're in. It's so subjective, especially animation.
Yeah.
You sit there and you're like, I animated this thing, and you think it looks like the fucking shit.
Yeah.
You're just like, this is amazing. Look at this, and then you go, I don't like the way that clavicle is reading, and you're just like, what do you see? Oh, you son of a! And then it just starts becoming a nitpick.
That's the hardest part. I've seen so many projects, and we all have seen projects that come through that get changed to the point where the project doesn't exist the way you fell in love with it, or it could be a shot, or it could be a sequence. We see it happen all the time.
Oh, yes.
And I know that I don't have all the answers. I'm not, and it's so subjective. Even though I venture out to make a perfect comic, people are not going to like it. There's going to be people who aren't going to like it. So if I think about that, it's like, well, let's just make sure Mike likes it, or that I like it, and then just go from there and just see what happens.
Because ultimately, you're making it for you.
I think you hit when you were talking earlier is something that I was curious about, where you talked about the zombies, and especially right now, for whatever reason, zombies are huge.
Right.
You couldn't have picked a better time.
Good time,
Right.
man.
To really do
Zombies
this.
are in.
But like you said, I'm feeling like there's become this elitist community of zombie lovers
Yeah.
who that thought process where you said, well, yeah, there's the slower zombies, and then there's the 28 days later. Was there a point where you asked around, or just said, I'm really just going to go here regardless of what those people really want? I'm going to go this way. Or was it like, well, let me ask some people. If you were going to, read a zombie, what kind of zombie would you want to, want to look at or see?
Well, I knew that, again, with the history, and that's where I fall back on all the time. I wanted whatever army this was to take over Europe, and I had to do it fast, and I had to, really create a threat. And to me, I couldn't get that threat the way I wanted
movers,
to. Yeah, because can you imagine a bunch of zombies going from Stalingrad across to the French coast? I mean, it would just take forever. Yeah, we hear this one coming.
20 books later,
you know what?
Made it.
Yeah, right. But then in this story, they move so fast, and it's all during the Cold War too. And so we've got Stalin on one side. Once those zombies get across to the coast, and the Allies don't know what they are, Stalin is accusing, because they've gone through and taken out army groups that are through the Iron Curtain, and they've wiped everything out all the way through. Stalin doesn't know who's done it, and he's blaming the Allies. It's in the Cold War. It's nuclear. I mean, I don't get that out of these guys that are
the lumbering,
tripping over themselves. So it had to happen fast.
Very, very cool. So I don't know too much about the process of making now, are you calling this a comic or a graphic novel?
I'm calling it a graphic novel, but does that...
Well, so this is the kind of part I'm curious about. Is this a series for you? Is this a one book that
it's
you're putting out?
book.
One book. So it's like Sean says, it's got to be a beginning, middle, end.
Yeah.
It's got a, and how long is the, or Josh said, sorry, my bad. Gave credit to the wrong person.
Oh. I think they got, I loved how they got annoyed with that.
Exactly.
I know.
Did the camera catch that? Oh, no.
Hopefully not.
No,
It's in the wrong spot. It's always in the
not
wrong
made it
spot.
around.
Self high five.
So I'm really, really curious about the process of creating a comic. Now, do you you obviously give a lot of latitude to your artist. Is he the one who actually then picks the text that goes in it based on a treatment that you've done? Do you have a person that actually pulls apart bits of story and then he creates the pictures to that? Tell me about that process.
Right, and I know that for comic book purists, I'm really going to sound like a hack here, and that's just the way it's going to have to be. But no, I've written the treatment. There's dialogue in the treatment, but it's not a full script. Comic book guys go off of scripts, and I think Mike actually really liked the fact that he could be a little more free with what he wanted to do.
How he interpreted what you were trying to say.
Right. And so I've got each chapter. The one thing I wrestle with this book is it's not Walking Dead. It's not this huge thing with backstory and love interest and all of this sort of, tension and who's mad at who. It's not like that. My story is a zombie story. Zombies are trying to take over the world with this guy, and they have to stop them. That's my story. So there are moments where I need the dialogue to be a certain way. But what Mike does is he roughs it out, and then if I feel like I'm not getting the right amount of panels to hit a certain point, then I'll ask that to be changed. And then once I get the roughs, then I lock down dialogue. The dialogue will be 70% done when he's working on it, but it's that last 30% that I slot in, once I see the finished panels. And it might even change as I'm doing the dialogue with the finished artwork, when I'm like comping everything together and doing the color correction, all that kind of stuff. So it's a very organic thing. And I should mention also my editor, DJ Kirkbride. He won an Eisner Award for Pop Gun Comics, and he's just a guy from Sony. I didn't even know he was into comics until somebody mentioned, oh yeah, this guy, he's a comic book guy. And I needed a guy that could be an editor, and he came on board, and he's just been fantastic. And I keep saying, is it good? Is it cool? And he's like, I love it. It's great. So I just go by the little creative group as to whether we're hitting the right notes. And
what does an editor do for a comic book? So you say you'll get roughs in, and you'll kind of finalize dialogue and text that goes on the page and stuff. And then is your editor there to make sure that you're doing spell checking, grammar, all that good stuff, as well as, hey, this is really kind of boring, or can you word this a little different so it doesn't...
Yeah, I think I push him for, is this boring?
Right.
More so than somebody else would. But there's a lot of rules with comic book balloons and all that kind of stuff. When you have a square caption versus a balloon, when you have like an ellipse, like all this stuff that is...
I have no idea.
Yeah,
right.
No clue. That's interesting.
It's a whole world of doing it right. And also lowercase I doesn't, you can't... it can't be a lowercase I. And wait, sorry, it's uppercase I for I, and every other time it's lowercase. You can't have an uppercase I anywhere else. Like it's this like there's all this weird stuff with the typography.
Interesting.
Yeah, and so
he's your subject matter in the rules to follow.
Right. So he'll go through and make sure all the I's are correct.
Oh, interesting.
And then he'll make suggestions, and then I'll ask, like, is this boring? Does this part flow? Does it, because that's all the stuff that I'm interested in, because I feel like that's where I don't have a lot of experience. I'm learning as I go. And so I need somebody like that to just give me a sanity check on whether the material is good. And so he's been great with that. And yeah.
So I think one thing that we spoke about briefly, before the show, we're all really fascinated with is you got started in a very, very particular way with a very popular website that's out there right now, right?
Oh, Kickstarter.
Yeah.
It's hot.
Give us a little bit about the story to this
Yeah,
thing.
I didn't know about Kickstarter when I first got in touch with Mike. We started this process before I knew about it, and I was ready to, I'd already looked at maybe how much the book was going to cost me to make and all this kind of stuff, and I can't remember how I found out about Kickstarter. I probably just stumbled upon it like I stumbled upon Martin Bormann and whatever else in the internets. And
deep in the internets.
Yeah. And I thought it was really cool because one thing that worries me when you have ideas, and we're all like really protective of our ideas, we're scared of theft. We're scared of people taking our ideas. And the thing with Kickstarter. Oh, so yeah, someone's scared of theft in here. So
you mean the movie you're currently on that was Josh's original idea years ago, Wreck-It Ralph?
That I was talking
he pitched to Sony.
People at Sony.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's an interesting topic.
Yeah, that's another side
We don't
story.
need to get into that.
But it's funny you brought that up.
Pisses
again.
me off.
Yeah, well, it's really frustrating, right? Like ideas. I don't know why you wouldn't want to reward someone for a good idea. Why is it? Why do we all feel like we're threatened with that? I don't know. Anyway,
and ideas mostly, what I find nowadays, are always loosely based off. And you even said, the idea from where you're even going, it's always loosely based off potentially either somebody else or somebody else's creativism that you were like inspired by, or like, that was awesome. I'm not going to take it per se, but I'm going to do my twist on it and roll with it.
Right.
And me personally, I still think it's the best compliment you can give anybody is to go off something or get inspiration from something maybe that was out there and then try to make it your own or make it better or expand on it.
For sure.
It's just the nature of things nowadays.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, Kickstarter.
Yes, back to Kickstarter.
I'm sorry.
No. So I loved that I got to maintain the IP rights. That was something that was really important. I don't want to give up the rights to the story until it's done, until somebody wants to make something awesome out of it. And so I could essentially pitch the idea to people and raise the money for the book and see if there was any interest. That was something that I was curious about, how people were going to relate to it, whether they want to support it, And so I spent a really long period of time figuring out, okay, rewards, because anybody who isn't aware of Kickstarter, you come up with rewards, which is you give me $20, you get a book. And if you give me 50, you get a book and a shirt. That's kind of what I was doing. I was like, okay, if I'm at Comicon, what would I spend $50 on? Would I spend it on a shirt and a book? Yeah, no problem. So that's kind of how I did that. All my Comicon experience was how I layered in the rewards, and we had artwork, get yourself drawn in the book, all that stuff. And so I set all that up, and I even went to this, the detail that I put into filming this video. I think,
which is very good, mind you.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Me and Sean watched it today.
Oh, excellent. Well, one of my buddies laughs at me because he says, you don't blink.
You are very serious.
Right.
You're very serious in this.
And it's serious business.
It's serious business, yeah.
But the funny thing is about the blinking is that, or not blinking, is that you sound like you know what you're talking about, when you're not blinking. And then a buddy of mine also, who's like a commercial director, he wanted to help me out with just filming it. We talked about how we want to do this. You want to do handheld cameras or whatever. The thing with the iMac camera was that I felt like the more polished it looked, the less I felt like I needed money. It was just this way of thinking that I felt like, I was looking for help to make it, and I didn't want to look like I was like, I didn't need help. And so, we just set this whole thing up. He had wardrobe for me and everything and lights and all this kind of stuff. So a lot of effort went into that so that I I could pop off the background and all this kind of stuff. But a lot of work went into making it seem like it was just me filming it,
Right. Interesting.
So, yeah. And then another buddy of mine, John DeFerre, he did the music for it. He's a composer, and he just did a phenomenal.
I thought that was amazing too. I was going to ask you where you had gotten that from.
Well, John, he used to be Miami Sound Machine. He was like one of the.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so he's toured the world, and now he's a composer, and that's how he makes his living. He does music, and it was a really nice. What I really liked about Kickstarter, and even if it hadn't worked out, I really loved the collaboration between my friends, like people that were out to help me do this, and that was what I thought was really cool about it. John came up and just did this amazing music. If you listen to it, it's just like, wow. He played it for us when it was done. He played it for us in the studio, and I just couldn't believe it. It sounded amazing. And my buddy Mike Rutherford did the cutting of the video together and stuff, and yeah, and then you just sort of reach out to your friends. Once it's launched, you send out noise on Facebook, and you just feel like you're bugging people a lot of the time.
Yes, you do.
Listen to Nerdtastic.
You mean like starting a podcast and trying to get listeners?
Yeah.
Podcast, you want to listen to it? You like us?
Right.
Please?
And as soon as I launched this thing, the next morning I'm up and I'm checking. I'm going over to Kickstarter. Did anybody pledge? And my first couple pledges were like one guy from Mexico, another guy from Switzerland. I was like, well, this is awesome. It felt great. And then you go through these doldrums where nobody pledges for days.
It's not my mom.
Sweet. Yeah. But at the end of it, you have, half of them are your friends, half of them are strangers, and people just really want to support, what you're doing. And it's really cool that I think it's a great site. I really recommend it to people. I don't think it's easy to get, necessarily it's an easy thing to get people to donate money, but I had Nazi zombies.
What was the goal and what was your end result?
That was what I was going to get. I think you had what I liked about yours as well. I think you had a reasonable amount.
Yeah.
Like money-wise, what you were asking for,
right.
What the final goal was. When I looked at that, something I noticed instantly. I'm like,
right.
Well, that's a doable amount.
Yeah. Yeah, that was another thing I thought long and hard about, because really what I would have liked to have done is raise 20 grand, because that would have given me the money to do the website and a whole bunch of stuff I couldn't do. But I forced myself to say, be honest, how much is the book and how much are the rewards? And that is what I need to ask for. And if I can get more than that, then that's really cool. So I set it at about 8,000, which that pretty much covered all those costs. And I mean, I don't even know yet because the book's not done, but, and then I ended up raising like 12 and a half or something. So it was great. You know, to go over what you're asking for was amazing. And
yeah, that's
absolutely.
I love the concept of the crowdfunding, partially because like you say, it's your friends, but also because I think as myself, like, man, I'd love to see someone do this at some point in time. You go into Kickstarter and you're like, I would pay money to get these special, the product that someone's creating, as well as these special prizes, or what do they call it?
The rewards.
Yeah, the rewards.
Yeah.
And I just think that concept is so interesting to me. It's like I want to invest in the artist community and other people's passions. You know? Like, what an interesting idea.
Was there like a back thing where, how does Kickstarter make any money then? Do they take
They take a percentage.
They do take a percentage. Okay,
3%, I believe, is what they took.
So tell us, do you mind going into a little bit of the detail? Anybody who's out there who's interested in looking into potential Kickstarter, like, do you just go onto the website and sign up, and then give us actually, I'm curious if you know what your rewards, if you remember what they were, all of them, and your thought process. I'm really curious into how you went about just even starting on Kickstarter to I got fully funded and that whole process.
Right. Well, I did a lot of research on successful and non-successful pitches on Kickstarter. I watched the ones that sucked. I watched the ones that did great. There's a guy at DreamWorks, Jason, is a Brubaker. Remind me, he did there's a graphic novel. I think he's in the story department over there. Anyway,
there's been a few people I think that have done it.
He had a great one, and he did really well with his funding. And he's actually sold some books at WonderCon. So I looked at his a lot. There weren't a lot of comics when I did it. I think it's really blown up since I finished mine.
I didn't even. Yeah, I had no idea there were comics at all. I mean, I was still focused on like the video games and movies that are trying to be done through
right. I think it's harder to get funding for movies. I don't know for sure, but I feel like with a comic, you've got something. Like, people can say, yeah, I'd pay $20 for a comic, and they give you $20 to make your comic.
Right.
I think with a film, it's a little tougher because you're not necessarily getting an end product. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the filmmakers out there, how successful they've been. But, in terms of the rewards, I wanted it to be like Comicon. So I structured it in a way that I felt like there was value. Sometimes you get people like, for $5,000, you can be an executive producer of something. I mean, I don't quite know how valuable that is.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like shirts and books and artwork. We did a limited edition print for these like zombie berserkers that are in my story.
What was your smallest reward, and what was your biggest reward?
Smallest was $20 for the book, and then the largest. Wow, I can't remember so much now. I think I got up to 500 or 1,000 or something like that. I can't remember now.
And you said you had one where you would at some point, if you paid X amount, you get. And is it always you get all the stuff before it as well as this new thing?
Yeah, did you?
Oh, right. Well, some of them were exclusive. There was a zombie, like the zombie print. It was like $90, and you got this. Mike Doherty did a great design of these like giant zombie berserker characters, and that's just for that reward. I think they get the book as well. But yeah, so sometimes you get everything.
Right.
Sometimes I just sectioned it out so you could be a soldier in the book. You could be a character's name. You can have a name of a guy in the book, or you can be a zombie. So I've got 5 people that are going to be zombies.
That's awesome.
And it's hilarious.
That is rad. I love that.
So it's a Nazi zombie book, and my guys are. I've got an Indian guy who's a buddy of mine. I've got a Filipino guy who's a buddy of mine. They're all like clearly not going to be
not Aryan.
Yeah, they're not going to be the Fuhrer's like prized. So I got to figure that one out. But you know what? That's part of what's good.
That makes it awesome to me. That makes it so awesome.
I love the concept. I have a picture in my mind of the sea of Aryan, and then like 2 like
Punjabi.
Yeah, right?
It's just like thumbs up.
I made it, Mom.
Yeah, and you draw him in. You're like, damn, we got to put him in this.
Yeah,
that's
draw him in the
so
back.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's hid by shadows.
That's very cool. And so Kickstarter works in a way that you pledge a certain amount of money, and if the project reaches its goal, that's when the money will get pulled from your credit card or whatever it is.
Yeah, you can bid $100 on my project, and if I don't cross what I set as my threshold, so $8,500 or whatever it is, you only get charged as soon as I cross that threshold, and when I do, then your credit card gets hit.
Are there any legal ramifications or like implications of you having to deliver? People have paid money for goods now. What, like, let's say, not that you're not going to fish because I know you are, but let's say hypothetically somebody didn't get their project made. You get funded $12,000 and you never finished your product. I
would think that I don't know if there's legal implications. Morally, I would think people would do that, but yeah, I don't know.
I wonder
we've
if
talked about this in the past, and we're curious about that.
Like, because there's some big ones out there, and there, are, like you say, there are some prizes where somebody says, like, "Oh, I'm going to put down $10,000 to be an EP on something or whatever." Well, what happens if that project gets funded, but then never gets to, comes to fruition? So you're just out $10,000 without what you invested in, like that.
I'm sure they have stopgaps for that type of behavior. I've never thought about it because I've never. I'm going to do the book, so it's not something that I think about.
But, right, absolutely.
But you have to pitch them. You have to say, "This is what my idea is." You have to sell them on what your rewards are. They have to understand what you're doing.
Your video was perfect for that.
Oh, great!
I mean, honestly, I was very impressed with. I could tell the editing and the music and everything else. I was impressed by that in itself.
Oh, good! I'm glad
to sell it actually.
And would you recommend Kickstarter to people? Did you have a good experience with it?
Had a great experience.
Awesome.
Yeah,
very
for
cool.
people that are creative that want something that they've been working on to take it to another level, or to feel like that, just to do something that's a little more liberating creatively, whatever it is. I think it's a great venue to do that.
Absolutely.
And for me, it markets the book a little bit too. It's like, do people really like this stuff? So
absolutely.
Yeah.
How many people total pledged?
I had a little over 150, I think.
Cool.
Yeah, so I've sold 150 books.
That's awesome.
And that might be all.
Now,
but what's awesome with you is you seem completely fine with that.
Yeah, it sounds like you're on it's just a fun project.
Yeah, I'm not. I do have hopes for the project.
Oh, of course,
and I've got goals, but every step of the way, I just feel like I'm taking another step to another goal. Like for me, the fact that I was able to get Mike to start this book, and we're going to make. That was huge. Getting people to fund it is another thing. The cover artist. I talked a little bit about that with you guys. Just George Pratt. We can get into that, but having him do my cover art. That is huge for me as a comic book fan, as a fan of his work. That's something that came through with this, and so every step of the way, I feel like I've really won on this, even if it doesn't go beyond
from just the experience alone.
Yeah,
I mean, just hearing your story, that's what would get me.
Yeah,
right.
You walk away with this experience that many people will never have.
Right, and with George Pratt, this is a guy. When I was in Montreal at college, the first comics I bought, were Arkham Asylum by Dave McKean and Enemy Ace by George Pratt, and I bought them because I loved the style of the paintings. These guys are traditional artists. They were loose. They were expressive. They were just really, you could feel the texture in the work, and I really loved that. And so, and I had George's. There's a little fold out from the Enemy Ace of this, like it's a World War I thing with a skeleton with the old the pith helmet thing, and it's beautiful poster. And I've put that up everywhere I've worked. I had it at Sony. I have it up at Disney. I just love the thing. And so when I had this, when I first started writing, and I wrote this World War I story way back in the day, and a buddy of mine who works as a creative executive, I wanted him to read it just to see what he thought, because I loved this World War I thing. And so he read it and he said, I know a guy who would love this, and he knew George Pratt. And so he put us in touch, and I just got in touch with the guy. I had his phone number and now an email, which is just terrible for these guys. When a fan gets your personal information,
I'm sure you never used it.
I want to use it all the time, but I never call the guy.
You want to get pizza? Hey, you want to go to the movies tomorrow?
Yeah. So anyway, I reached out to him years and years ago, and I might have tried to get in touch with him once every 6-7 months. Nothing crazy. But then when the Kickstarter thing was going, I said, you know what? I'm just going to send it to George and just see what he thinks. He got back to me right away, like within 5 minutes, and said, I would love to do the cover for you.
That's awesome.
And so the first comic I ever bought, biggest fan of George Pratt, and he's doing the cover art. That to me is a win. So if it doesn't go any further, that is another thing that I think was great. And the cover is amazing. When he showed it to me, I was badgering him for a year. I was like, George, when's the cover coming? And I guess he was waiting for a particular model that he'd love to use, that he wanted to use for this cover, and the guy wasn't available or whatever. Anyway, he just started sending me these sketches one day, and I'll just get them on my iPhone. I just couldn't believe how cool they were.
That's amazing.
You know, so...
Now, what's your time frame? You said you're hoping Comic-Con next year we'll see the book. Are you wanting to deliver in a year from now or 6 months from now? What are you thinking?
Well, we were hoping to have it done by now, so we're a little behind.
All right, that's
You
good.
know?
It's a passion
But,
project.
you know, stuff happens.
Well, everybody's working.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, this isn't your guys. Anybody on this project, none of their full-time jobs.
Right. This
correct?
is all an extracurricular thing. So, but I think Mike is going to wrap up all the artwork by December. That's the plan. And then I'll probably need another 2-3 months to polish everything up. And then I don't know how long it takes to get the books printed. That's an X factor. I don't quite know that process yet. But
do you have a company in mind that's going to do the printing for you and all that? Have you done that research yet?
I've talked to a couple people. You know, they've had books done up. I don't know yet. I'd like to go local. I'd like to maybe use somebody around here if I can afford it. But we'll see how that goes. And it's really touch and go with printing. You've got to find someone who's going to really pull off a nice looking book. And
For sure.
the samples they give you don't necessarily reflect
The
finished,
quality.
So
And do you have that in your mind? I mean, probably based on other ones you've seen, I'm guessing, like what you think you want it to look like, the final result to look like?
a little bit, yeah. I mean, I want it to look great, but I also know that, this is like I'm learning. As I said, I'm learning as I go, and so there's going to be moments. What I would really like to do is maybe get in touch with a guy that's put together a book, because once the pages are done, you have to sort of get them ready for printing, and so finding somebody like that who could just make sure everything is buttoned up properly, real polished, real professional, So that's the next step.
You don't walk in and be like, "I'd like this to look like the Bible, please."
Yeah.
How many pages is it?
It's going to be around 150. So we got 5 chapters, 30 pages per chapter, and give or take, it just depends on what type of action Mike wants to put in. Because sometimes he just goes completely crazy with the drawings.
That's awesome.
Like I'll describe to him something. The zombies come over and they encircle this this battalion, right? And so I kind of described it as it would be really cool. It was sort of like Fantasia 2000, with the girl when she's going around the volcano, something that's that's a little more symbolic and simple, but very, very clean. And so that's sort of where my brain went. That's how I would draw it because I can't draw the zombies, right? But then Mike does this sort of 3/4 down shot into the valley with zombies running by camera and going around this. It's just insane what he does. I don't know how he does it. It's really cool. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
What's your final format? Are you doing soft cover, hardcover?
I would love to do hardcover, but I don't know whether the budget really. It just depends if I can raise a bit more money. I'm doing like a print sale. I mean, there's stuff that I'm trying to do to get a budget a little higher, so that I have options like that. But we'll see. If I can do it, I would love to do hardcover, but it's stuff costs money.
It does indeed. It does indeed.
No doubt.
So I personally owe you a very, very huge thank you.
We
have had one particular topic on our podcast topic document that's been around for well over 6 months.
Animators that can't draw.
Nope.
Yes, you've finally broken that threshold.
And
Thank
to
you,
this
Chris.
day, no one has given us a proper segue until you.
Okay, let's go.
So
have
the concept,
I've only know one that has been on there since
I don't
the
know which
beginning.
one we're talking about.
Oh, I
here,
do.
so
I want to see if I'm right.
on the concept of World War I.
There it is.
Oh, that one. Okay.
It's been on there since
So about
day
damn
one.
time, by the
and
way.
Chris
So-
will know this, being a history buff, probably.
And seriously, you guys can attest, been on this. We just haven't ever gotten to it because
Okay.
it's never been appropriate. So, like you, I am very, very much fascinated by certain points in history. I'm not
Okay.
even going to say history in general because
Right.
there are ones that bore me to tears. I'm not going to lie.
we know you like the Nazis. so
Exactly.
go on.
But there's stories that you experience and that you hear in your life, and I think some of the most compelling, passionate human beings that have ever lived experienced World War I and World War II. I personally really do believe that.
Yeah.
And the amount of how much the nation rallied behind these young men,
Right.
it's really fascinating to me.
Mm-hmm.
The most, I think, touching story I have ever heard in my life, movies, books, whatever it is, the single most touching story I've ever heard came from World War I. It's called The Christmas Truce.
Yes.
And you may be able to fill in some of the details because I may forget some of them. But basically, at World War One, Christmas comes along, and it's the Germans and the British that are fighting each other, right? Mm-hmm. And trench warfare, huge in World War One. So everybody's bunkered down in these long trenches. And in between the trenches is this area called No Man's Land, which has got lots of barbed wire and dead bodies and just craters from bombings and things of that nature. And Christmas comes along, and the British start singing. You know, they stop. The firing kind of stops because it's nighttime and nobody can see. And the British start, or Christmas Eve, I should say, I guess. And the British start singing some Christmas carols in their trenches. And they grab some hot tea, goes around their trench, and they're on one side of this no man's land, and they start singing these Christmas carols. And then all of a sudden, they hear across the no man's land, the other side is also singing the German version of the song they're singing. And all of a sudden, they're singing Christmas carols together. Mm-hmm. They've stopped fighting and are singing. A bunch of men that were formerly trying to kill each other are singing together. That in and of itself is so incredibly touching to me, but it doesn't stop there. They actually gain enough confidence that they're not going to get shot by each other, that they come out of their trenches, they come into this no man's land, and they put their arms around each other, and they celebrate Christmas together.
Right.
They sing songs, literally like arm around this guy I was just trying to kill, and they're swaying back and forth singing Christmas carols together and sharing hot cocoa.
Yeah.
And that story just blew my mind, of this idea that I'm trying to kill this person across from me. I'm filled with adrenaline because he's trying to kill me, and yet I can stop and I can put my arm around him and we can celebrate this day together. And again, the story just keeps getting more and more interesting. And then as it goes on, the Christmas Day starts to come to a close and the sun starts to set, and they go off and they go back to their trenches and they bunker down, and all the celebration starts to die. Next morning comes up.
Back to work.
They're back to work again.
Right. That's a crazy story.
This story, I've been wanting to tell it on the podcast for so long. It's
Really?
literally just
So
such an incredibly touching story
It's a piece
to me.
of our history.
And I think one of the things that touches me about it is all surrounding World War I and World War II, there is such definable evil and bad guys, right? I mean, definitely the more notable is World War II, but you have this thing that's so evil and so paramount that it's something easy, that's why it's called World War. The whole world can rally behind defeating this evil, this one distinguishable villain. And I think just what an amazing concept those or demonstration, I should say, of human compassion and human shared passion that these two wars can show. And that just kind of blew my mind even more with the Christmas truce, because it works both ways.
Right. Yeah, and they even played a soccer game too. And then after, when the Kaiser found out about it and the Allied leadership, there was no more of that.
Right.
That was the only time it happened, I think, in 1914.
Yep.
And that's in Enemy Ace, George Pratt's thing. There's a little bit about that in Enemy Ace, and it's just one of those things. It just shows how sad it was. These guys thought they would be in and out in 6 months in World War I, and they thought it was just an adventure, and no one was ready for how mechanized war had become, and the machine guns drove everybody down into the dirt. That's why that happened, and there was no way, and their warfare, the tactics of warfare were still Napoleonic, advance. And so you'd have that going up against the mechanized element of this war, and it was just it was terrible.
Is the idea that the trench? I'm always fascinated with trench warfare, but was the idea that the trenches would eventually get so close on both sides that it would just bleed? It just would be an overall bleed over of both sides, almost hand to hand.
No, I think it was. I think that the goal was to just take the enemy trench, and then they would fall back and they dig a new trench, but that would happen so infrequently. You would really just be moving meters forward, or it just wouldn't happen. You would just be stuck in this one spot. They had trenches going from, I believe, the North Sea all the way down to Switzerland.
Wow!
You could walk it all the way down, Allied side and the German side. It's just really sad, and I think one of the reasons why I get so attached to World War I is that I feel like those guys going up those ladders, I feel like that's D-Day every single day. When that hatch comes down, we see that hatch drop down on D-Day in Normandy.
They're just getting leveled.
They're just getting leveled. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to hide. And the fact these guys would walk up and not even question it and just walk forward, it just amazes me. I would break I would just, I mean, I'm as soft as it gets. I would break. These guys, 18 years old, and people were lying to get over there. They're 15, 16 years old. It just amazing to me.
Absolutely.
Did you have you heard the one with the trumpet and the sniper?
I don't know if I've heard that one.
There was a German sniper, and he was just waiting to like shoot this trumpet player who was in the army, and they were waiting there for so long, and the trumpet player knew that this sniper was just lonely and just solo and had nobody there, and so he played him a song. And the next day, the sniper came down and just surrendered and shook the guy's hand, and he was just like, "Oh, your song touched me so much." He goes like, "Oh, I couldn't do this."
Wow.
And that was it.
One hell of a song.
Yeah.
It's just so interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
Devil Comes Down to Georgia or something.
you
Katy
obviously
Perry.
That's exactly where I was going to go.
Yeah.
you obviously have to take into account that both World War I and World War II have been romanticized by kind of common culture in the last decade or so, or longer than that. But I think
2 years ago.
Yeah, just 2 years ago. But I think it's really interesting that the passion that people had to go fight a common evil, I don't know that exists anymore today. I don't know that war today is glorified and romanticized in the way that it was back then. Now, maybe my kids will tell a different story. Maybe they'll say like, "Oh, wow, the Iraq War was this great, noble thing." But it seems like technology, we've been, you mentioned the machinery that was introduced in World War I. Well, we've now gone beyond raw machinery into pure technology in a lot of our wars, and it's almost like we hide behind our technology. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You still have, this is nothing against the armed forces that are out there, but you still have men and women that are out there fighting on the front lines, but
Right.
you have so much technology to separate you from the danger and from the enemy. It's almost like it's not romanticized as much because you're not literally being shot at with 100 extra guys. I know that's probably an over exaggeration. There are.
I think it's also the concept that we don't have a very clear enemy anymore. Like World War I and World War II, there's a very clear thing that you were fighting against, and now it's a whole bunch of things. Maybe.
I mean, there's a couple things now. One, and I've thought about this. We very much now would never, and it was proven with Saddam, with Kuwait. We very much now would not let anybody try to expand their borders. It just nowadays it's impossible. Like if a Hitler rose up all of a sudden and he was based out of Austria, and Austria was his foothold, and he managed to somehow convince everybody in Austria that they needed to fight for him, he might make it a little bit into the next country, like the first city that he attacked. Then that would be about as far as he made it. And and Saddam tried that with Kuwait, and we were the first really to jump, but we jumped. And countries like North Korea, who we still consider a pretty big threat, we've just now managed to wall their ass in.
Right.
They can't. They'd love to go further. They tell everybody how they'd like to go further.
Right.
But they can't go further. And and I think nowadays what would have happened if a Hitler, would have rose up in today's times, where he'd even be able to get to.
That's an interesting question.
Because of back to your question, because of technology.
Yeah.
Right.
Because of the lack of information and
it brings up a really interesting question to me. Maybe this is getting too moral for the show here, but do we have because we have the technology, the ability, if you will, to stop people from expanding their borders? Do we have the moral right to step in and stop somebody from doing that?
I think on grounds of humanity, I guess would be the argument, right? What are the reasonings? Yeah, and at this point in our lives and what we see of the world, I can't fathom a humane reason for anybody
do we have the
to
right
take over
to
another
take
country.
over Canada?
Because I'm in.
Why?
Why would we want to?
I'm in.
Oil, baby.
There it is. There it is.
Oil.
Chris,
And water.
we're coming north.
No, I know. Texas can take us.
Get your Navy ready. We're coming for you.
Yeah.
Don't you know?
No,
Well,
but sorry, Chris. No, to go back real fast on the warfare fighting, it's so funny you talk about men on the ground and 100 men, and we're so tech advanced that it's not just the same. Videos got sent out too long ago. I don't know if it was on our group or I maybe sent it to our email group that it was guys in I don't know if it was Iraq or Afghanistan. It might have been Afghanistan, but it was a military unit who the big thing now is a lot of these units have GoPros, and a lot of them are sending footage back of their units and what they're doing, and it's this new hype. Did you, Sean? I think I sent it to you, but it was a unit, a pretty large unit over a wall, shooting across a riverbed at just some other guys, and I mean, it was still, in my eyes, it was still as rudimentary as the guys in the trenches, outside of going up the ladder, but the ones in the trenches who were high enough to shoot over, blindly knowing bullets are coming this way, they're going this way, and them shoot. And these guys were doing that. The guys were handed M60s, and they're yelling at each other, "Where's it coming from?" From the guys down there. And these are today's Marines with the most tech you can have are still doing this shit. And I was blown away watching this video that they were doing that, because the logical side of me is like, I'm like sitting there going, well, one was like, I'm not going to shoot it if I don't see it. And these guys,
right,
blind fire.
I mean, and it's across the riverbed. I mean, and you couldn't see because there was another guy trying to get his camera up to look, but it still hit me that the ground portion of war, even though the enemies changed a bit, it's still the same shit. It's still guys. It's not head to head coming right at each other, but it's still guys, still with guns, just trying to hit the other guy the best they can.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
It's and you can go to YouTube and look at this. We'll try to find a link for you guys to show you guys. I was fascinated with it, though.
Once you figure out where they spawn, though, it's okay.
And that's in my head. In my head, that's what I was doing. I was putting in a video game. I'm like, they're wasting ammo. He doesn't know who the hell he's shooting at.
The one thing that's definitely a common thread, is obviously the fear of death, right? You're going out there and you are risking your lives for fear of death. And I think the thing that, for me, modern warfare this concept really encompasses fear for me is the IEDs, right? Those improvised explosive devices that you could be in a Humvee trying to keep the peace, going in a place that's relatively peaceful,
safe.
Yeah, can be considered a safe zone, and all of a sudden your whole entire unit could be blown up just because someone created this random little bomb or mine and buried it in the ground and you didn't know about it. I don't know. It's the concept, obviously, of losing your life is very, very present. But the idea that in my mind, in trench warfare, I know that my death is right ahead of me. One of those people is going to shoot me in the face and I'm going to die. Versus, I got to watch my step. My death could literally be anywhere around me.
That's probably a much different idea of you going into a battle with a particular outcome in mind and dying for that purpose.
Right.
Whereas you're on a side of a road filling up your Humvee with gas and you're dead.
But see, that argument could go with me. I always think to Vietnam. Sorry to curse, you got me fucked up. You think I'm walking into some jungle, their jungle, not my jungle, their jungle. Let me repeat this again. A fucking jungle that you can't see shit.
Yeah.
I'd rather be in fog, because I know he can't see me either.
Red fog?
A red fog? Damn it.
Yeah, what's up?
You guys. Saying all the right things.
That battle scares the hell out of me.
Yeah.
And it's the same with our guys in Afghanistan who are going up these mountains or going into these mountains, and they're raised there. And it'd be no different than the guys who fight in the Marines who are from Kentucky, and if we had an enemy that showed up in their back door, Red Dawn style.
Worked for the Minutemen.
I'm sorry for the guys who parachute into Kentucky. Oh, they're so screwed, dude.
Yeah.
Worked for the Minutemen. That guerrilla warfare.
Well, that's what I mean. It's nowadays. The enemy has wised up enough to. It sucks they're attacking us, but at the end of the day, they're the ones screwed. They got to adapt to us.
So I just learned this the other day. Do you guys know what the difference between the Army and the Marines is? This is not a joke. This is the real. Do you know what the difference is?
I want to hear your answer.
You guys know?
It's very open-ended. What's your answer?
The Marines are the infantry land division of the Navy.
Yes.
And the Army is a whole separate branch of the military. I had no idea. No idea. Mm-hmm. I always thought, man, well, if I'm going to join an infantry land-based, I might as well get a sword and a dress uniform, right? Because they advertise a hell of a lot better than the Army does.
We're back to D-Day. Well, because they can't get as many people to join that outfit.
Yeah.
Because you show them the big animated one where you're fighting a dragon, and then Chris goes in and cuts in the D-Day door opening up on the boat.
Yeah,
exactly. You're like,
different messages there. Yeah. The guy climbing up the mountain,
both Marines,
right? Yeah.
Well, but it's the whole Marines versus Army. It's interesting. Does the Army, can it not go overseas?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can.
But
I mean,
you're transported by the Navy?
My sister has done
Yeah.
2 tours in Iraq.
So the Navy transports
No.
the Army and
No.
their own... the
My
Marines?
sister went over in AC-130s.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. On that note, we're going to start to wrap up the show.
Aww.
I know, it's been a
We're
really,
having a
really
good
fun
time,
one.
right?
It is definitely
Yeah.
a very, very fun one.
Yeah.
Red Fog.
Yeah, Red Fog.
So we, Chris, you may not know this. We started, maybe 8 or 10 episodes ago, doing a weekly challenge to ourselves and our listeners, where we come up with one challenge and we try and accomplish that challenge in the week before the next podcast, and we award ourselves points, and we have yet to determine what those points are for.
Okay.
So last week, we actually recap at the end of the show what our challenge was from the previous week, and then come up with the new one for the next week. So last week I came up with, we did our poker tournament, so I thought it appropriate, perform a card trick on someone outside of the podcast. So Sean, you did not get a chance to accomplish.
Totally forgot about it.
That's A-okay.
Wah, wah.
I'm going to say that while the rest of the three of us did accomplish it, it was under very poor, unimpressive circumstances, basically.
No, it was not. I had the whole table asking me what the hell I was doing.
I'm not saying the trick wasn't impressive. I'm saying we were all at a barbecue for the 4th of July together, and we all took turns performing card tricks on the same audience.
Exactly.
Crammed it in the last night before the podcast.
Well, Josh crammed it on the way to the podcast, his high five challenge.
Yeah, that's true.
It's true.
So we've had some challenges in the past. This one was perform a card trick. We've had some that are a little bit more humanitarian. Tip somebody more, spread some kindness more than you normally would. We kind of try and mix it up. Jack proposed a very interesting one time. Why don't you tell Chris about that little recap?
I was throwing a wrench. I was just trying to shake it up a bit, literally. And I said, this goes for females or males. I said, my challenge this week is that at some point in the week, I'm going to guess somebody and everybody listening is going to masturbate. Use your opposite hand.
Wow.
It's quite a challenge.
Exactly. Well, Chris, that was a legit wow.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting to hear that word.
That's quite a challenge. Yeah, we're an explicit podcast.
Yeah.
So,
Poop.
I felt good about it, though.
So,
I was
Jack,
confident with it.
let's start with you. You accomplished the task?
I was the first one to accomplish the task.
You
sir.
were. You definitely were.
I used I needed 2 other people to help me with it, but it had the table guessing.
Wait, are we talking about the card trick?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're talking.
We don't openly talk about the other one. Don't worry.
Chris, it required 10 people.
Yes, best guest ever.
Chris is
I started a Kickstarter for my idea.
Chris is like, I'm going to leave now. If you guys are openly talking about this.
Yeah, the magic trick went off. It was awesome.
It was. You had some people that were definitely very baffled
I had to
by how you were
explain
doing.
because they got a little upset with
Which
me.
you broke the number one,
I told.
the golden magician
You
rule.
two didn't tell, and yours was obvious.
Yeah.
Josh,
Hold
I
on
told
now.
mine.
yeah, Josh
Hold on
told
now.
yours.
Hold on now.
Everybody
When
knew
you
yours.
said obvious, I literally
you
started
did,
it.
You did change it up.
I
You did
started
change
it. I
up.
got halfway. Everybody was like, now that's one. I'm like, hey, hold on.
He did change it. I
Got it halfway through, and then saw just puzzled looks on people's faces as I got to part 2 of my card trick.
Chris, have you seen some card tricks?
I've seen some.
Okay, so
Yeah.
there's a couple simplistic ones that are based on math,
Right.
and Jason's started very much like that, and everybody at the table was like, "This is a math one." We all started
Exactly.
shooting him down.
Card number 11 is going to be your card.
So these guys are harassing you while you're trying to
Yes.
win.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely.
But then
Wow.
I get halfway through the trick, and it's like, oh, wait a minute.
Chris, I've blown minds. He's bringing math into the equation.
Math is also mind
Math
blowing.
has blown minds before.
It has as well.
Yeah.
And I think we can't possibly do a podcast this week, a nerd podcast, without mentioning the Boson-Higgs particle?
Higgs Boson.
Higgs Boson. I got it backwards. Which is the God particle?
Apparently, it's the particle that makes up all the other particles. Is that right?
I'm not sure. I read some.
Shit's on fire,
Watched
yo.
a couple of. Basically, I think the simple nuclear physics that we all know is basically 100% complete with the exception of this one particle that needed to be still discovered, and the Large Hadron Collider in Geneva
Found
or
it?
whatever it is finally found
When
it.
it created a black hole that's going to suck us all in.
I don't know. I don't even know. And they announced it yesterday. They
millions
celebrated
of
our
mini
freedom.
black holes.
Our freedom, Chris.
Wait, America's freedom? What are we talking about?
North America.
Oh, good. I'm
yeah.
part of that too.
Absolutely.
I'm free.
That's the best part of that newsroom quote. Have you seen the newsroom on HBO?
No.
There's Jeff
Aaron Sorkin's new show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And Jeff Daniels does this amazing monologue at the beginning of the very first thing where he's at a college and he's on a panel with these two other news anchors, and somebody comes up and asks, what makes America the best country in the world? Mm-hmm. The one person says, well, it's a land of opportunity. They skip to the one on the other side of Jeff Daniels. He goes, freedom and freedom. Jeff Daniels gives some bullshit answer to start with, and the guy gets on him about it. He's like, I need a human answer. And he gets, another bullshit answer. He's like, it's not. And he looks over to he says something to the chick with the opportunity, and then he looks at the dude, he goes, freedom. He goes, are you fucking kidding me? He goes, Canada has freedom. There's 127 other countries that have Australia, Japan. You want me to keep going? And he just broke this down, but it made me think of that with freedom. I'm like, there's a lot of places out there with it nowadays.
Yeah.
It's catching on.
Right.
Feel free to feel free.
So you guys know that typically we like to take turns coming up with the challenge. Josh is sweating right now because he's worried I might hit him.
No,
don't
I know
worry.
it's not my turn.
Don't worry.
No,
So
Jason has us.
I'm actually going to mix this up a little bit, guys.
Because I had the push-up one like 2 weeks ago.
I'm going to steal another one, and we're going to get out of rotation for the weekly challenge, and we are going to do something that is a 1 month long challenge, and it is a group challenge.
And this is not the masturbation.
Why do you gotta always bring it back to that?
Because it's so damn funny.
So my challenge to us as a group and to anyone else who out there is listening is I challenge us to spend 30 days, and at the end of 30 days, as a group, we need to come up with 5,000 gamer score. Meaning we need to grab achievements in games that we're playing, and we are each responsible for 1,000 gamer score. Now, getting every single achievement in one game is 1,000 gamer score. Every single one. Some of them are very difficult. Some of them are very, very easy. So you could pick 2 games and just hammer out the little easy ones, and you could probably get to 1,000. You can pick one game and try and complete it all the way through, which I have to tell you is an incredibly satisfying feeling to do that. But it's not just that we're each responsible for 1,000. It's that we as a group are responsible for 5,000. Meaning if I come up with 1,000, Josh comes up with 1,000, Sean 1,000, and Jack 800, we fail the challenge. What do you guys think?
You guys better step it up.
I thought this would be perfect for you. Your family's out of town.
For 20 of the 30 days.
Dude,
I may be the one coming in at 800.
No, you play different games though.
What happens if somebody goes
you're likely to
1,200
go.
and
That helps.
We carry the weight.
okay?
Yep, we carry the weight. So I'm trying to. I'm gonna hopefully maybe.
This is
do a
on
little more.
Xbox, and this is solely for the Xbox gamers out there.
Now, for us in the room, we're gonna challenge ourselves to do the and with Adam, of course, is to try and do the 5,000, and we'll fail if we don't get 5,000 as a group. However, for anyone listening out there, if you don't have a group, feel free to adjust your group size based on however many you have. But if not, accomplish 1,000 gamer score in 30 days, starting tonight.
Right now, go.
Tonight.
Starting tonight.
You're already behind.
Or we'll give you Chris's email and phone number, and you feel free to contact him, and you guys can work together.
Yeah, I love listening to people.
who call my house in the middle of the night.
So will we still have another weekly challenge next week?
We can talk about it. I was thinking probably not. We'd probably just give updates on our efforts towards the goal for the month.
Take a photo.
Oh, yes.
Take a photo of all of us in here. Do take a photo of your current gamer score before you start tonight.
And
Okay.
if you don't know what it is, if you download the iOS app,
I'll
Xbox
tell you
Live,
right now where the hell I'm
That's
at.
right. I can tell you where I'm at right now too.
let's compare notes. Why not? Why not?
While you guys are comparing notes, I'm going to talk a little bit about another podcast that I was on.
Yes.
Yes,
absolutely.
Sean.
Thank you for bringing that
So
up.
I visited Chicago over the weekend to visit my family who's staying there, and my brother-in-law runs a podcast called Something Cinema with his friend Mike. So my brother-in-law is George, and his friend Mike. They run this podcast together, and they just talk about movies,
No last names.
movies
Jorge.
and TV shows that that they watch over the time. So showed up on their show. It was very fun. Sat in a room with the guys and chatted for about 40 minutes. And their podcast talked a little bit about what I do at DreamWorks and sort of the state of how films are made there. And then we talked about Prometheus at length, which was an intriguing, deep-diving discussion about Prometheus on the level of it's a film, how do you look at it as a film, and then on the level of sort of a literary work of the type of symbolism that they tried working into the script and all that stuff. So
yeah, and I listened to it, and Sean, we love to whore you out to other podcasts, but honestly, so the guys were really, really smart, intelligent. They gave some awesome insights into that movie. They put words to some of my own confusions towards Prometheus, so I really appreciate their insights towards that. So yeah, definitely a great show.
Sounded went well, dude.
It went well. It was fun. George
sounded
and Mike,
like you were
thanks for having me on the show.
A man of men.
Yes.
and Jack's article this week on was it Forbidden Panel?
On Forbidden Panel it goes up. Andrea M's.
That's up right now.
Who interviewed? I think Jason's is coming out next week.
Jason's is up next week.
Is it actually posted? We'll throw the link.
I think it is posted. Yeah, I'll throw it up. Yeah, I'll throw it up, and I haven't read it yet, but hopefully I don't sound like a complete douche.
We'll put a link up to Something Cinema too.
All right.
So I'm at 4,853 currently.
I'm at 15,294.
So
okay,
I'm gonna hit 100 this month.
Wow,
Josh, I am at 15,845.
One upper.
And I have no idea because I don't look at that number.
Everybody, seriously, take a picture, screen grab of this screen, whatever it is, of your start gamer score and your end gamer score, and we have to come up with 5,000 by the end of the month, 30 days from now, or our fourth podcast from now, whatever it is. So, as we wrap up, Chris Williams,
yes,
thank you so much for joining us,
gentlemen.
on the show.
It was a blast.
Yes, brother.
Really enjoyed having you.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, it was awesome.
Red Snow.
And thanks for Red
Snow.
Frog.
No, that's incorrect.
That's the follow-up.
Incorrect.
And thanks for working on what sounds like an awesome comic.
I
graphic novel.
hope it's awesome.
Fog.
I love it, but I hope everybody else thinks that. You know,
I'd love to have you back once it's out.
I was actually
absolutely
going to say that Red Snow should be the sequel to Dead Snow, which was the Nazi zombie B movie that
which
was
everyone
made
has
on
asked me.
Netflix.
Have you seen
yes,
Dead Snow?
absolutely. But no, Red Fog comes out in 2013, safe to say.
Yeah.
And
Wreck-It Ralph comes out.
Yeah, and I just want a little plug for an app we're doing. We're going to have a digital version of the book.
Awesome.
Oh, awesome.
For the iPad. It's not going to be a straight one-to-one. You know, it's not just the pages. It's going to have a little bit of interactivity. It's going to be really nice. And that will be available, chapter downloads, before the book is ready. So we'll probably launch that, I would say, maybe October or November for download. And you can then the new chapters will come as updates. And
Very cool.
It'll just be a new way to see the book. Cool. And the great thing about that is that we've got backstory and other little chapters that we would like to do if the book does well. We could just get those into the app and just keep working on it and building the backstory. So
that is awesome. Well,
cool.
you definitely have gotten 5 readers. Adam will read it as well.
Oh, he will.
Yeah,
Okay,
we'll
good.
force him down to the ground.
He has no
to read it.
choice.
You'll read 5 versions of the book, or one and share
Absolutely.
it.
No,
Okay.
just one and share it.
Five
Because I'm going to have a
individuals.
lot in my garage, guys. I'm just saying.
So check out Red Fog, the Nazi zombie awesome graphic novel. And you're going to have a little presence at Comicon next week, like you said.
Yep.
So check them out while you're down there. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode number 32 of Nerdtastic in 3D. My name is Jason Carter.
Jack Deckler.
Sean Fennell.
Josh LeBron.
And Chris Williams.
Yay!
And we'll see you next time.
Forget.
Hasta. Bye.
Later.
Nerdtastic in 3D.